Yeah, good for the old brains. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, delete where applicable. And it's definitely quiet out here. I haven't ridden through the city centre in a while. And it's just gone 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. And I'd definitely be pissing around a load of lines of traffic here if I was coming in on your average 10 a.m. So this is quite quiet. And I realised only yesterday, looking at a few videos, that it's been actually 2 months since I uploaded the day one on the SRS video. And it didn't seem like 2 months, but as we know, time lost all meaning. So at some point back in February or March, I said I would have a go at doing an old video. And so consider this a bit of an update. Again, those of you who follow the channel will know that I've given up promising the sun, moon and stars in terms of future uploads for Lent, for a long protracted Lent here. Bye, and so I'll get you caught up, and maybe I'll disappear for another couple of months, maybe not. I do have a bunch of video to edit about the trip last year. I was only watching some of the raw videos there yesterday and realising just how fucking alien it seems to just piss off on a bike around Europe. I think you could probably still pull it off, with the sort of easing that's going on. I don't know how, mainland Europe is for making you do quarantine whenever you cross a national border or anything like that. But we're close enough, I would say. But people never cease to amaze me with how adaptable they can be. And that kind of works both ways. 6 months ago, going on a trip around and, showing up to a touristy place with a load of people milling around was perfectly normal. And now you sort of look at a video and you look at us showing up to a big crowded touristy place and you just point at it and go, no, wrong! And so it works both ways. People can adapt to a new situation very, very quickly, for better or for worse. And so today, for better or worse as well, at the risk of getting all podcasty on you, I am going to talk about mental health a little bit, I'm afraid. So feel free to tune out your ears or go watch something else if you don't want to hear about it. And specifically when it comes to the lockdown, or such as it is, or the situation. And I'll talk about my own thing a little bit. I mean, it's not by accident I haven't uploaded a ton of videos, despite having the appearance of a load of time to do it. And so back in February or March, or whenever everyone realised this was a thing, when it all kicked off, people were definitely of the opinion that this will be a thing and it'll blow over and etc. And so I'll drop another tiny hint, but I'm sort of in the business peripherally of risk management. So I worry about things for a living to an extent. Not in the staying up at night, 11 p.m. on a Sunday, shivering and thinking about things kind of way, but in a sort of having a realistic appreciation of how bad something's going to be, right? And how much risk you're willing to take on, and that sort of thing. And so in my logical brain, the sort of factors I thought about were, okay, people are not travelling anymore, right? People are closing down businesses, people are starting to work from home where possible. How long is this going to go on for, right? What should our plans be? In my mind, one of two things was going to happen. One is that this will all be a big fucking wash, and it'll be like, oh, hang on, we actually know how to treat this, and it'll be sorted in a matter of, a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And that, that you always have that in the back of your mind as like, okay, maybe don't push the big red panic button just yet, or give yourself an out to not do that. And the second one was, okay, say this is as bad as it is and there isn't a vaccine, what's the general time it takes to get a vaccine out there and to everybody. To which the general answer for that is, how long is a piece of string? Like, I mean, it could be any amount of, like, the shortest amount of time you're talking is about 18 months. Right, and so that was kind of my assumption, right? That was like, I'm 95% sure that's going to be the case. That we're out and we're going to be out for 18 months. And there was definitely up until about April or May, a bunch of people saying, like, so when are we going back? Like, when is this all going to be sorted? And I'm just like, ask me again this time next year. And I got chuckles out of people, and I was kind of like, I felt like a conspiracy theorist briefly, but like, what I was basing this off was fairly basic deduction powers, right? Where it's just like, not a chance. Like, I mean, unless there's like, not even a vaccine, but therapeutics for it, where you can, where we have drugs that mean it's actually not lethal. It gets the lethality rate down to, somewhere in or around the flu when it's treated. Then you're like, okay, fair enough. Like, there's still a basic rate, but it's not like a mysterious thing that might kill you. We're not sure what the criteria are for making it worse or making it better, but we can give you these drugs and you'll generally be grand. Like, that was still a definite possibility. And as we got into April or May, I was like, cool, alright, I guess I won't be back into the office, an office full of people this year. And again, chuckles all round. And here we are. I just seen that Google there the other day said they're not going to be asking people to come back until mid next year. And I'm just kind of going, that's, they're going to be pretty conservative about it, but there's other places that can't really be as ballsy about it and have to kind of go, yeah, we might be back, we might not. And part of me, again, the risk management, decision management part of me looks at it and sort of says, can we not give people more certainty? Can we not just sort of say, listen, stuff isn't opening back up this year, and so make other plans, as in, if you have a business that relies on people coming into you every day and milling around in a big business and doing business in person with people and in-person paperwork, like, get that sorted. Don't wait it out. Change your business and change the way that you do things and learn stuff about yourself and have that hard discussion and those hard discussions with people. And I think we're only getting to that point now in a lot of places that they sort of go, okay, I guess if we're not back this year, we have to change our business. We have to change the way we do things and the way we work and all of that sort of thing. And so it said something like 80% of people don't want to go back to an office afterwards, and I can sympathise. I'm one of those people that kind of do, because again, I talk to people for a living, but it's definitely, people's minds are changing and mental models are updating very, very slowly, and we'll get to the point probably towards the end of this year, start of next year, where people go, okay, things have fundamentally changed, right? So anyway, that's the basics of the macroeconomics of it, if you want to call it that. Is that it's a big thing. It's not going away. In some cases, things have changed permanently. Right, we're not waiting it out anymore. And so how that factors into people's mental health journey, and I'll kind of say that the very quiet revelations that I've heard over the last 6 months, I've heard people over the last 6 months talk about like how things affect them mentally for the first time that I've ever heard them, like the first time in their lives that they've really taken a step back and assessed their mental health. Because if you look at it from the pure, and I grew up in Ireland where mental health wasn't a thing. It's just not, like, what are you talking about mental health? Like, as long as you have your physical health and you do things, like, mental health is just a case of getting over yourself, right? And there's still very much that mentality out there, including in the back of my mind. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that if people say to you, okay, you have to stay in your house for like 4 months and try and do everything from there, and also you might lose your job, that people will just fucking pull their trousers up and say, alright, I'll get that sorted, grand, no bother. And like, that's not good for you as a a social animal, as a human. Like, being stuck away in essentially solitary confinement. Like, this is how we punish people, right? And we punish them mentally as opposed to physically. Like, if you're in prison, for example, like, you're in prison, like, you're away from the rest of society. Like, it's not like you're in prison and we're also beating the shit out of you, right? Like, you're just in prison. Like, that's the punishment. And so it was in effect, it was a collective punishment. Now, it was a necessary collective punishment. It was for our own good, right? And it means that different people rationalise that differently, right? I'm sure there were a number of people who were sitting there going, I'm doing the right thing here. I'm fucking delighted to be doing my part, right? I'd say that was a tiny minority of people that were thinking about it in that sense. Like, I'm keeping people safe by staying in here. And I'm sure people started out that, but I don't think there was anybody who finished it up that way. And for the vast, vast majority of people, this was not good crack. It was essentially a punishment. And so you can't really, we can't really collectively punish ourselves and come out of it unscathed. And a lot of people that I spoke to over the last number of months were kind of like, I'm not feeling right. It's like, this is not good. Like, and a lot of these, and myself included, and I'll put myself in this bucket as well. If you face them with the prospect of you have to stay inside, and you have everything you kind of need. You have internet access. You can call people. You can be in touch with people. You're able to get supplies. You're able to do everything like that. That sounds fucking amazing. It's like, I have a perfect excuse to do fuck all for the next 4 months. Look at all the things I'm going to get to. And like, there were a bunch of people sort of saying, like, take this opportunity to like start a small business and learn a skill and learn a language and all this sort of shit. And of course none of that happened. But the premise of it was like, oh yeah, I mean, on paper this sounds amazing, right? Now, in practice, not so much. I mean, in practice it was doing that while a really fucking horrible thing was happening outside. And where if you do wake up one morning and decide you want to go see people, like your family or your parents, you just can't, right? It's not a thing. And so that was no crack. Oh, love this executive parking. Yeah, maybe don't pull out. Maybe do that. And so, yeah, if somebody is punished like that, like they're put in prison or they're imprisoned otherwise, they experience trauma. And I think we haven't even seen the start of what happens when you do that to a society, when you sort of collectively punish, an entire set of people. Even if it was self-inflicted, it still happened. It was still enforced. And so I think we're only at the start of even realising what that's doing, because it's not over yet, lads. Maybe punished is the wrong word. Maybe it's like, society is taking its medicine. It's something that's necessary but unpleasant. Mr. Windscreen freaks me the fuck out. What is wrong with his hand? Does he just wipe your windscreen with his big fucking hand? Freaky fucking weird bastard. And just as a sort of an aside, my prediction is actually since apparently I'm podcasting this week, here's my hot take. Yurt is over the next, I want to say 5-10 years, we're going to see a whole lot of disaster movies about diseases and pandemics. I know there are a few out there, but it's always been a thing. And why I say that is, when a society experiences collective trauma like this, it's always reflected in art, right? It's always the example I'll give, and I'm in no way comparing the magnitude of what happened today to what happened in Japan in World War II after the bombs were dropped, is that for a long time afterwards, a lot of their media and a lot of their look at Godzilla, or like a a lot of if you watch anime at all, if you look at Evangelion or if you look at any of those kind of things, it's a big fucking scary thing that comes out of the sky or comes from nowhere and fucks you up, like destroys the city, fucks everything up, really, really bad, and you know, we have to stick together to do away with this big thing that's really bad, right? So it wasn't exactly, there weren't a lot of films about A-bombs being dropped, but there were a lot of films about like really fucking bad world-shattering shit happening, right? And so, keep an eye on it. Tell me in 10 years if I'm right. But in Western media for the next 5-10 years, there is going to be a lot of this will be, or the outcome of it will be reflected in art, right? It happened, you saw there were a bunch of war movies, and a bunch of media around war, even video games. There's a lot of those because of Gulf War 1 and 2, the war in Afghanistan. A lot of American media was like, here's some shit that happens around war. And honestly, American media was also like, soldiers are great, everyone please think soldiers are great. It's hard to tell which direction it'll take, but there'll definitely be a shift, I think, in what's being covered in media and what's being written about and what movies and other stuff are being made about. Oh, welcome to Smellbridge, home of commuters, or former commuters. Actually, there's my secondary, slightly less boiling hot take, or maybe equivalently boiling hot take, is towns like Selbridge, which are like commuter towns, and Selbridge was one of it's in Kildare. It's one of the earliest commuter towns I can remember. I remember growing up, because I sort of grew up in this neck of the woods, is that like this is where people who work in Dublin can come and live. So you can work in Dublin still, but live in the country, because like there's a train station just down the road, and Dublin Bus still sort of technically comes out here. And so they were like, yeah, live in the country and work in town. And so the thing with commuter towns, and a lot of them have sprung up, or a lot of existing towns became commuter towns, is that like people just fucking sleep here. Like they don't have a life here. Their life is still in Dublin to an extent, like first generation people certainly. I think if we end up with a significant percentage of people who were commuting into town but now aren't, they don't have to, or they don't have to as much. Say, for example, you're being told you only have to come into work a day or two a week, and you're actually spending all your time in Selbridge. Your standards for Selbridge go up. Like, if you're in a random town, you don't have to leave every single day, and you don't have what the fuck is that lad doing? You don't have the ability to, get your fancy coffee or your nice bun in Dublin anymore most of the time. You're going to need coffee and buns in Selbridge, and I know Selbridge is replete with coffee and buns, but the standards will definitely go up, and the standards for sort of local services will go up because people aren't spending all their time commuting or in Dublin or in larger towns, wherever they're commuting to. And I mean, that might end up being a good thing, because standards will go up, people will demand more, local businesses will do better. Although that said, if I were Mr. Starbucks, I'd be definitely looking at expanding my presence in commuter towns where people are going to be hanging around more rather than leaving every day. And so I can definitely see, and as well, people who are living in town because they're like, I work in town, so I'm going to live in town. If you're told you only have to go into the office a day or two a week, you're going to start looking at a little further out, right? Selbridge is big and sprawly enough that it's probably, there's not a huge amount in it, as in there's not a huge amount in the difference between living here and living in a suburb in town, services wise and experience wise. But I'd say people are going to move out a lot more, and rural Ireland might get a shot in the arm from people who are actually living and working out here, as opposed to commuting the most distance they can possibly stand every day and only really sleeping in the town that they live in. But enough about you, let's talk about me and the aforementioned mental health and how things sort of hit me or are hitting me in the lockdown. And I know I kind of referred to it in the past tense somewhat because we're for the most part open back up again. I know there's a load of stuff still closed, but I mean you can go places and do things if you really want to. And I learned a ton of stuff in the first couple of months of that, right? Now, the first couple of weeks were like, this is unusual. Let's wait this out and see how long it lasts. And once we got to, like, I haven't been to the office since March, like the middle of March. And when I got to, I want to say, May, I was like, okay, let's get settled in and let's figure out what the new normal looks like. And one of the things I discovered, and if you're an introvert, as I think about half of us are, you'll know that there's like, you've got books and TV and movies, and you've got a backlog, projects, like stuff that you want to do. If you ever get a load of time to yourself and you're sort of stuck at home, like, I always imagine in some sort of bizarre way that, like, if I ever got sick for like a while, and I was still sort of compos mentis, I still knew what I was doing, but I was just like, if I broke my leg or something, I'd get to a load of stuff, because I wasn't in and out of the house all day long. And that's kind of, I discovered that that's kind of bullshit, right? That I had all the time in the world. I literally had weekday mornings and evenings and weekends free, couldn't go out, and I just had like all of the fucking, and I tell you something, I got rid of more TV movies than I got rid of. I meant I deleted them. I said, I'm actually never going to watch these. If I haven't watched them by now, I'm never going to watch them. Or if I haven't read this by now, I'm never going to read it. Welcome to Clane, home to an Aldi and a Lidl. That's how you know you've made it in the rural commuter town stakes. And so anyway, yeah, the idea that you could get to everything you weren't getting to because you were so busy in your time at home has turned out to be bollocks. I'm sure I don't have to explain that to a lot of people here. We all went through it. And so anyway, as we got into things, anything that lasts longer than a couple of weeks, you're out of the office for a couple of weeks because of something that happened, like, the office went on fire or something like that. Generally, people can kind of deal with that. They'll complain about it, or they'll be annoyed about it, or that sort of thing. A couple of months and it starts getting a little bit different. And especially if it's like a couple of months and then uncertainty and then a fairly strong signal that, like, it's not going to be the same, like, things have changed, things are different, they're not going back to the way that they were. And so people were dealing with this, and I was dealing with it. And I remember talking to a chap I knew previously about big job changes or big changes to your life, and how he had gone and gotten help previously when, funnily enough, when he actually quit his job one time, and it was a job he liked, but he had to go do something else. He found himself in a situation where, leaving that job and going somewhere else was a better deal for him. But he'd been there a long time, and he went to a sort of a counsellor type person and said, come here, I just feel really wrong. I just feel really kind of like something has changed, and I'm, it's weird. I know it's the right thing that's happening, or I know it's inevitable, but it still feels really weird. And the counsellor person basically came back and said, what you're experiencing is grief. And I think the same thing happened to a lot of people as they kind of realised, hang on, this is different. This isn't going back to the way it was. This is a change that I can see happening, and that I think is, I don't like it. It's inevitable, and I don't like it, but it's still happening, and I still don't like this situation in a weird way that I can't put my finger on. And it's a similar thing, although, not as heavy as, for example, if you lost somebody very close to you. If they died one day, right? And we don't deal with the realities of it very often, that everyone's going to die at some point, and we're going to have to deal with the fact that they die, and being made to deal with something that's of this magnitude for people. And I know there are some people who, like, a lot of their self-worth is tied up in their job, right? Their job is what they have, and they live for it, and it's fantastic. And I mean, they haven't lost their job, but it's very, very different. And they don't know if they're going to be as good at it, and they don't know if they're going to enjoy it as much, and they don't know if things are going to change back to the way they were, and if it will be actually back to the way it was. And it's just really fucking weird and uncertain, and makes you just sad in ways. Even if you didn't really like your job, there's probably some parts of doing your job you enjoyed, like you liked the banter, or you liked showing up, or you liked some bits of it, and you have that taken away from you in a really sudden and explainable but also not explainable way. You know why it's happened, but you don't really understand or internalize why it's happened, and that's grief. That's it's as simple as that. It's the exact same emotion, the exact same feeling. And so I think around May or June, a lot of people were experiencing that. And this is one of those things that, again, going back to the Ireland specific thing, is that like people don't acknowledge this sort of shit. They just sort of go, oh yeah, just work away. I mean, what's it like to work from home? Yeah, it's a bit annoying, but it's grand, right? And and if you ask the more searching questions, like what's it going to be like to work from home for the next year or the next 2 years? And if people answer honestly, it's actually not grand, and they're not doing great. And there isn't as much acknowledgement as there should be that this is a big deal, right? This is something that people need specific help with, because a lot of these people, they describe that weird feeling to me. Like, I talk to a lot of folks still over video conference, and they describe that weird feeling to me, and they're like, I thought I'd be doing great, and I'm not. Like you told me you can work from home for like 3 months. I thought I would have got a lot of shit done, like, because I'm not being hassled by people all day, and I just can't do it because I just have this weird, thing going on in my head. And I'm like, yeah, that's the fact that you have a brain, and that it doesn't respond well to essentially trauma. And so a lot of people or have been having the revelation in the last 3 to 6 months that they're not invincible, right? You can be as fit as you like, or you can be as healthy as you like, but if you're not right in your head, it's it's a different set of muscles that you're exercising. It's a different thing. And so that was the first few months. It was dealing with a lot of people who were essentially grieving for their old life and understanding that it isn't coming back. And I think there's probably still some folks in denial out there who are sort of like, even though they're sort of saying like, this time next year it'll all go back to normal. And I'm like, nope. Like, it'll go back to something resembling normal, but a lot of things will be very, very different. Yeah, and so up until May or June, I had a fairly reasonable handle on it myself, going back to me for a second. And it's when you start getting into the, okay, this is long-term part, is when it gets tough again, right? Because like people, as you say, people are adaptable, right? If you give them a new set of constraints, a new set of situations, they'll sort themselves out and they'll work with it. Where it gets difficult is where you say, okay, this is now normal, and it's something as big as you don't go to work anymore. You don't go to an office and get hassled by people anymore. That's just not a thing. So put it out of your mind, right? At some point in the future, it will be in some way, shape, or form, but for the moment, it's just not. And how that manifested, or let me say, is manifesting with me, is like I just got really fucking crabby all the time. I was just like, I was a total prick, like, and again, some of it I'm still working on it. Like, we're always working on it, but total prick to be around. I didn't get very much exercise at all. It's surprising the amount of exercise you actually get just being in an office, walking around and hassling people. When you go from that to essentially nothing, that's not great. I've plenty of opportunity to do exercise, and then I just didn't, right? Because I just didn't feel up to it. Like, my brains were at me. And so I've somehow, if such a thing were possible, become less fit and put on a bit of weight. And that's not great. It's not weight I can afford to be putting on. And it's one of those things where almost every day, I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to go for a big walk. And then I'll start small, and I'll work it up from there. And I've done training in the past, and I've done, and I tend to I tend to go big or go home on some of that stuff, and I'm even aiming low now. I'm basically saying, like, I want to get back to the point where I enjoy doing exercise, and that takes a month or 6 weeks, going from I fucking hate this to this is actually grand and I'm used to it and it's in my routine. And I just need to punch through that, and it's, you know, it's not happening right now, and I'm saying this in a video is possibly one of the ways that I push myself to do it, but it's just it's fucking tough dealing with. And so I'm in the camp of people who are, it might look like assuming the worst, but honestly it's a little bit liberating for me to realize, hang on, no, do you know what, you're starting from scratch again, and you're figuring out what your life and your routine looks like given these new constraints. You know, you don't go to work anymore in an office. How do you deal with that? That's easier for me to deal with than, for example, that same situation except for a fixed 6 months or a fixed 3 months. You know, if I was doing that, I'd be like, yeah, do you know what, I'll just keep on fucking eating a load of pies and doing fuck all. Now, where it's like, okay, you know, the time is now for things. You know, where I sort of think about, like, if I ever get a load of time in the mornings and afternoons and evenings, I'll get fit, or I'll get back up on the cycling bike, or I'll do it. The time is now. You know, we're out of excuses, you know. But the continuing excuse is something, you know, we have to acknowledge, which is mental health, right? Which is, yeah, sure, I mean, am I capable of doing that? Am I able to go out and walk a couple of kilometres in the afternoon or the evening? Of course I am. Like any able-bodied person is. Is my brain capable of sustaining it? You know, and am I capable of saying that without my rural Irish 80s upbringing jumping out at me and saying, you're just a lazy fucker? I mean, it's a tough one to do, because that self-reinforces as well, right? You're saying you're not able to do this stuff, and then you feel bad about that, and then you feel bad because it means you're a bad person, and none of that helps. It makes things worse. And so that's the lifeless situation that I think I've kind of worked my way around to acknowledging that I'm dealing with. And I mean, if it sounds familiar to you, then maybe you were dealing with it too. But we're motoring on anyway. If you're seeing this video, it means I've been able to bring myself to do something, to make a video, which apparently is an insurmountable chore at the moment that I can't do. So we'll see if that happens. Or you will see. Anyway, the old bike is helping. Especially now that we're getting the odd day where the weather is holding out, like today. And it's definitely been good for the old mental health. I had to push myself to go out the odd time, because I'm in that weird space where I know I'll enjoy something, but I can't bring myself to do it. It's like, yeah, if you go out on the bike, you'll be glad of it afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't be bollocks. But today was not one of those days. Today I got out. I had a thing to do. I invented an excuse for myself to get up on the bike, and I am definitely glad of it. Alright, this next bit's a bit, so I will leave you at that. Again, I'm not going to make any promises, but hopefully I'll get more uploads done, but we'll see what happens. And I mean this more than usual, but do look after yourselves. Stay safe, stay healthy, look after your brains, and I'll hopefully talk to you all soon. Good luck. Here we have this famous Dublin landmark, the Tunnel of Nuns. Creepy as fuck.